You think you can make me raise someone else's bastard? Nolan roared, his hand still stinging from the slap he had just delivered across his bride's face in front of 300 guests. The wedding ballroom fell dead silent. Blood trickled from Jalia's lip, yet she rose like nothing could touch her true power. What happened in the next 5 minutes did not just end a marriage, it destroyed the man who dared to hit her. Watch until the very end to see a queen take back everything. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of women who refuse to stay broken. Let's go. Today was the wedding of Jalia Morgan and Nolan Brooks, the event everyone in their circle had waited for all year. The grand ballroom of the downtown hotel glowed under crystal chandeliers, filled with the scent of white roses and the soft hum of celebration. 300 guests in formal attire raised glasses of champagne, smiling at the perfect couple who seemed made for each other. Jalia stood on the small stage at the front of the room, radiant in an ivory silk gown that hugged her slim figure. At 32, she was a successful architect and creative director who had built her own firm from nothing. Her warm brown skin glowed under the lights, and her dark curls were pinned elegantly with tiny diamonds. She held the microphone with steady hands, her heart racing with excitement. In a few seconds, she would share the secret she had kept for weeks. She was 11 weeks pregnant with their first child. She glanced at Nolan in the front row and smiled, already picturing the joy on his face. Nolan Brooks, 35, handsome in his tailored black tuxedo, stood beside his older sister Lydia. He had been drinking steadily for the past hour. Lydia kept filling his glass every time it emptied, her smile sweet but her eyes sharp. Lydia was 40, tall and pale, always dressed expensively, and she had never hidden her dislike for Jalia. She believed her brother deserved someone who fit the old money world of the Brooks family, not a self-made black woman who spoke her mind. Jalia lifted the microphone higher. Before we cut the cake, I have one small surprise for my husband, she began, her voice clear and happy. The room quieted instantly. Guests leaned forward, eager for the moment. Nolan swayed slightly. The champagne had warmed his blood and blurred the edges of everything. Lydia leaned close to his ear, her red lips barely moving. Listen carefully, she whispered, her tone urgent and serious. I just got a call from Dr. Hargrove, the family physician. The baby Jalia is carrying is already 13 weeks old. You were in Europe for 10 weeks and only came back 4 weeks ago. Do the math, Nolan. That child is not yours. She planned to trap you tonight, right here in front of everyone. The words hit Nolan like a fist. His face flushed dark red. Doubt, fear, and alcohol mixed into something ugly. He stared at Jalia on the stage, seeing only betrayal. His hands clenched at his sides. Jalia continued, her smile widening. I have a secret I've been dying to share with all of you, especially with the man I love. She paused for effect, eyes shining. Nolan, we're going to be parents. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Guests clapped and whistled, overjoyed for the couple. Jalia's mother, seated near the front, pressed a hand to her chest, tears already forming. But Nolan did not cheer. He pushed through the crowd, his steps unsteady. People parted in confusion as he climbed the 3 steps to the stage. Jalia turned to him, expecting an embrace. Instead, his open hand swung hard across her face. The slap echoed through the speakers, sharp and shocking. Jalia stumbled backward, the microphone slipping from her fingers and crashing to the floor with a screech of feedback. She fell to one knee, pain exploding across her cheek. Silence swallowed the ballroom. Every guest froze, glasses halfway to lips, smiles dying. Nolan stood over her, chest heaving, eyes bloodshot and wild. You liar, he shouted, voice raw with rage. You think you can make me raise someone else's bastard? Right here on our wedding day? Jalia tasted blood where her tooth had cut the inside of her cheek. She looked up at him, stunned, the warmth draining from her face. The man she loved, the father of her child, had just struck her in front of everyone she knew. Her hand rose slowly to her burning cheek, but she did not cry. Not yet. The only sound in the huge room was the faint clink of a dropped champagne flute shattering on marble. The silence in the ballroom felt heavier than any sound Jalia had ever heard. Her cheek burned like fire, but the pain inside her chest hurt far worse. She knelt on the polished stage, one hand pressed to her face, tasting warm blood where her lip had split. 300 pairs of eyes stared at her, waiting for tears, waiting for screams, waiting for the broken bride everyone expected. Jalia gave them none of it. She drew a slow breath, pushed herself up with steady legs, and smoothed the front of her wedding gown as if she had simply tripped. The silk whispered against her fingers. She bent and picked up the microphone from the floor, the metal still warm from her hand moments earlier. When she straightened again, her spine was straight, her chin high. The room watched in the stunned fascination. Nolan stood 3 feet away, breathing hard, fists still clenched. He wanted her to crumble. He needed her to beg or cry or run so that his rage would feel justified. Instead, he saw only calm brown eyes looking straight through him. Jalia brought the microphone to her lips. Her voice rang clear and cold across the ballroom, every word perfectly steady. Thank you all for coming to what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It seems my husband has a different idea of celebration. A few nervous gasps rippled through the crowd. She did not pause. He did not hit me because he truly believes I betrayed him. He hit me because he is weak, and because someone filled his drunk head with poison, he was too cowardly to question. Nolan flinched as though she had struck him back. "Jalia, shut up!" he hissed, stepping closer. She ignored him completely and turned toward the front table where Eleanor Brooks, Nolan's mother, and the matriarch everyone in the room respected, sat pale and rigid. Eleanor had silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. She had welcomed Jalia into the family with genuine warmth from the very first day. Jalia reached into the tiny crystal purse still dangling from her wrist and pulled out 2 folded sheets. She walked down the 3 steps from the stage, heels clicking once, twice, 3 times, until she stood in front of Eleanor. She placed the papers gently into the older woman's trembling hands. "These are the ultrasound from last week and the prenatal paternity test I had done at 8 weeks because of the Brooks family genetic history," Jalia said, loud enough for every microphone in the room to catch. "Please read them aloud, Mrs. Brooks. Everyone here deserves the truth." Eleanor unfolded the pages with shaking fingers. Her voice, when it came, was strong and unwavering. Fetal age, 11 weeks, 3 days. Paternity probability, 99.99% match with Nolan James Brooks. She looked up at her son with icy disappointment. "The child is yours, Nolan." A collective exhale swept the room. Someone near the back began to cry. Jalia faced Nolan again. She slipped the diamond wedding band from her finger, walked the few steps to where he stood frozen, and let the ring fall. It landed with a soft plink in his half-empty champagne flute. Bubbles rose around the platinum circle, and champagne splashed across his shirt. "The party is over," Jalia announced to the room, calm and final. "I have already paid for everything, so please enjoy the food and drink. I will not be staying." She turned her back on her husband, on the ruined cake, on the life she had planned, and walked down the center aisle. Guests parted like water. No one dared speak. Her mother reached out a hand, but Jalia only gave her a small, reassuring smile and kept walking. The heavy doors closed behind her with a quiet thud that sounded like the end of everything. Behind her, Nolan sank to his knees on the stage as his mother's voice repeated the test results once more, louder, for anyone who had missed them the first time. The black sedan pulled away from the hotel with a soft hum of tires on wet pavement. Jalia sat in the back seat, hands folded neatly in her lap, staring straight ahead. The driver, Marcus, a quiet man in his 50s who had worked for her company for 8 years, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His eyes widened when he saw the red mark blooming across her cheek. "Miss Morgan, are you all right? Do you need a hospital?" he asked, voice thick with worry. Jalia touched the corner of her mouth and looked at the faint smear of blood on her fingers. "I'm fine, Marcus. Just take me home, please. My home." She meant the penthouse she had bought 4 years before she ever met Nolan, the one still in her name alone. The city lights blurred past the windows, but she saw none of them. Inside her chest, something had cracked open and was bleeding quietly. Not the baby, she knew the baby was safe, but the trust she had given Nolan so completely. She pressed her palm against her stomach, feeling the tiny life there, and made a promise she intended to keep. No one would ever hurt this child the way Nolan had just hurt her. When the car stopped at the private elevator, she thanked Marcus softly and walked inside alone. The doors closed, and only then, in the mirrored silence, did she let herself slide down the wall. She sat on the marble floor in her wedding dress, knees drawn up, and cried without sound. The tears came hot and fast, not for the marriage that had lasted less than an hour, but for the version of Nolan she had believed in. That version was dead now. 5 minutes. That was all she allowed herself. Then she stood, wiped her face with the back of her hand, and stepped out of the ruined gown. She showered, changed into soft gray leggings and an oversized sweater, and opened her laptop. By 2 in the morning, she had hired the best divorce attorney in the state, changed every phone number Nolan had, and blocked him on every platform. When the sun rose, she was already dressed for work, makeup flawless over the faint bruise, hair pulled into a sleek bun. She looked like the woman who designed award-winning buildings, not the bride who had been slapped on her wedding day. Across town, Nolan woke on the cold floor of the hotel suite, still in his tuxedo. His head pounded and his mouth tasted like metal. The events of the night crashed over him in waves. Lydia's whisper, the slap, Jalia's calm voice, the papers in his mother's hands. He stumbled to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. Downstairs in the family estate, Eleanor Brooks waited for her son with coffee gone cold. When Nolan walked in, still smelling of champagne and shame, she did not offer comfort. She stood up and slapped him hard across the face, the same cheek that still carried Jalia's blood from the night before. "You disgust me," Eleanor said, voice shaking with fury. "That girl loved you with her whole heart, and you destroyed her in front of the entire city. Lydia is no longer welcome in this house. Pack your things and get out of my sight until you remember how to behave like a man." Nolan opened his mouth, but no words came. His mother had never raised a hand to him in 35 years. The sting on his cheek felt like justice. He turned and left without argument, driving aimlessly until he found himself parked outside Jalia's building. He called her new number 20 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. He sat there until security asked him to move. By 8:30 that morning, Jalia walked into her office on the 42nd floor as if nothing had happened. Her assistant, Keisha, a sharp young woman who had started as an intern and become like a little sister, took one look at her face and gasped. "Jalia, what happened?" Jalia gave a small, tired smile. "I got married yesterday. Today I'm getting unmarried. Let's start the 9 o'clock presentation. We have a tower to build." And she walked into the conference room, shoulders back, ready to prove that no man would ever break her again. The whispers started on Monday morning and refused to die. No newspaper printed names, but everyone in the tight circle of money and power knew exactly which wedding had ended with a groom's hand across the bride's face. By Wednesday, Jalia felt the change the moment she stepped out of the elevator on the 42nd floor. Conversations paused. Eyes flicked toward her and away again. Some looked sympathetic, others curious, a few quietly satisfied. At 10 o'clock, Keisha knocked and entered her office carrying 2 coffees. She closed the door with her hip and set a cup in front of Jalia. "2 partners just called to postpone site visits," she said softly. "They used the word optics." Jalia wrapped both hands around the warm cup and nodded once. She had expected this. People feared scandal the way they feared fire. She opened her laptop and typed a short email to every major investor and client on the new Riverfront Tower project. The subject line read, "Open meeting today, 2 p.m. She hit send without hesitation. At 2 sharp, 30 people filled the glass-walled boardroom. Cameras from the local business channel waited in the corner. Jalia had invited them herself. She stood at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that fit her like armor, hair in a low knot, the faint shadow of the bruise hidden perfectly under makeup. "Thank you for coming on short notice," she began, voice calm and strong. "By now, most of you have heard what happened at my wedding. I will not hide from it. On Saturday night, my husband struck me in front of 300 guests because his sister lied to him about our unborn child. The child is his. The marriage is over. That is the entire story." A few people shifted in their seats. Cameras rolled. She continued, looking each person in the eye. "I am the same woman who designed this tower, who won the international prize last year, who has never missed a deadline. I am a victim of domestic violence, not a liability. If any of you believe a man hitting me changes my ability to deliver the best building this city has ever seen, then please leave now, and I will wish you well. The doors open. Silence stretched for 5 long seconds. Then Richard Langford, the 70-year-old chairman of the largest construction group in the state, and a man famous for never changing his mind, stood up slowly. I'm not leaving, he said, voice rough. In fact, Langford Group is increasing our investment by 15%. Any man who raises his hand to a woman like you doesn't deserve to breathe the same air. He sat down again. Applause started small and quickly filled the room. By the end of the hour, 3 companies had pledged extra funding, and 2 national magazines requested interviews about women in architecture. Jalia shook hands, smiled the right amount, and felt the tide turn beneath her feet. She had turned shame into strength in front of the only audience that mattered. That same afternoon across the city, Nolan sat in the dim living room of his new rented apartment, scrolling through industry chat groups on his phone. Every post praised Jalia's courage. Someone had leaked short video clips of her speech. The comments called her unbreakable, iconic, a queen. Each word felt like salt in an open wound. He opened a private investigator's report he had paid for that morning. Page after page of Lydia's debts. Casino markers, failed real estate flips, loans from dangerous people. She owed almost $2 million. If Nolan and Jalia had a child, the Brooks Trust would shift heavily to the next generation. Lydia would be left with almost nothing. The motive was ugly and simple. Nolan closed the file and stared at the wall. For the first time since the wedding, real anger rose in him, and none of it was aimed at Jalia. He picked up his phone and dialed his sister. When she answered, sounding cheerful, he spoke with a voice he barely recognized. We need to talk, Lydia. Tonight. And you are going to tell me every lie you ever told about my wife. He ended the call before she could reply. The man who had once let others steer his life was finally grabbing the wheel. Nolan Brooks had been waiting outside Jalia's office building for 3 straight days. He arrived before the sun rose and stayed until security threatened to call the police. His beard grew patchy, his eyes turned red from lack of sleep, and the expensive coat he wore no longer hid how thin he had become. People passing by recognized him now and whispered, but he did not move from the stone bench across the street. On the 4th morning, Jalia stepped out of her car and saw him immediately. She paused on the sidewalk, one hand resting lightly on the small curve of her belly that only she could feel. Nolan stood up slowly, hands open at his sides like a man approaching a frightened animal. She studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod toward the small coffee shop on the corner. Inside, the place smelled of warm pastries and roasted beans. They took the table farthest from the windows. Jalia sat first, back straight, arms folded loosely over her stomach. Nolan remained standing until she finally spoke. You have 5 minutes, she said, voice quiet but firm. Sit. He dropped into the chair as if his legs had given out. The barista, a young woman who clearly recognized them both, brought 2 waters without being asked and disappeared quickly. Nolan wrapped both hands around his glass to stop them from shaking. Jalia, I am so sorry, he started, the words rough in his throat. I was drunk and stupid, and I believed the worst thing anyone could say about you. I hate myself for it. She watched him without blinking. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no softness, only steady brown eyes that made him feel smaller with every second. I know Lydia lied, he continued. I have proof now. She owes millions. She was terrified our child would cut her out of the family money. That is why she poisoned me that night. I should have questioned her. I should have trusted you. Jalia's fingers tightened slightly around her own glass. You keep saying she poisoned you, she answered, each word measured. But she did not force the drink down your throat, and she did not force your hand across my face. Alcohol did not make you hit me, Nolan. Lack of faith did. You never truly believed I was yours alone. He lowered his head, tears rolling down his cheeks without permission. I know I failed you in the worst way possible. Please let me fix this. I will do anything. She reached into her large leather tote and pulled out a slim blue folder. She slid it across the table until it touched his shaking fingers. Then sign these, she said. Divorce papers. I keep full custody. You pay child support on the first of every month without fail. You stay away from me and the baby unless I decide otherwise. And I will not press charges for what you did at the wedding. That is the only offer you get. Nolan stared at the folder like it was on fire. His chest rose and fell too fast. Jalia, please, we can go to counseling. We can start over. I love you. She leaned forward just enough for him to see the faint yellow shadow of the bruise that still lingered under her careful makeup. Love does not slap a pregnant woman in front of the world, she said softly. Love does not need weeks to decide whether to believe the mother of its child. You destroyed what we had the moment your hand touched my face. There is no starting over. A tear fell from his chin onto the table. He opened the folder with trembling fingers and stared at the blank signature line. The pen she placed beside it looked impossibly heavy. 4 minutes left, she reminded him gently. He picked up the pen, then set it down again. If I sign this, will you ever let me see our child? Maybe one day, she answered. When I decide you have earned the right to look at him without making him feel the shame you carry, that day is not today. Nolan closed his eyes. The coffee shop noise faded until he heard only his own heartbeat. He thought of the ultrasound picture his mother had forced into his hand the night of the wedding, the tiny shape that was already part of him. He thought of Jalia walking away in her wedding dress, head high, unbreakable. Slowly, he opened the folder again. His hand moved across the page, signing his name in dark ink that looked final and irreversible. When he finished, he pushed the papers back to her. Jalia took them without checking the signature. She stood, smoothing her coat over the gentle swell of her stomach. Thank you, she said. Send the first payment by the 5th. My lawyer will contact you about the rest. She walked toward the door. Nolan stayed seated, head bowed, the empty chair across from him, the perfect picture of everything he had lost. Lydia Brooks realized something had changed the moment Nolan stopped returning her calls. For 2 weeks, her messages sat on read, her invitations ignored. Panic crept in like cold water. If her brother stayed angry at her, the family money would flow only to him and the coming baby. She needed to act before he softened toward Jalia again. Late one Thursday night, Lydia sat at her marble kitchen island with a glass of red wine and 3 different phones. On the burner account she had created months earlier, she began posting. First came the blurry photo of Jalia leaving a hotel with a male colleague 6 months ago, cropped to look suspicious. Then came the fake text messages, carefully aged screenshots claiming secret meetings and a lover in London. She sent everything to the private society groups, the ones where old money gossiped behind passwords and fake names. Within hours, the posts spread like wildfire. By morning, Jalia's name sat in dozens of inboxes attached to the word cheater. Jalia woke to the storm. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications from friends forwarding the lies. Keisha burst into her office at 8:30, eyes wide. They are saying horrible things, she whispered. Photoshopped pictures, fake conversations. Someone wants you destroyed. Jalia scrolled through the posts once, face calm, then closed the phone. She felt the baby move inside her, a small flutter that steadied her heart. She had expected Lydia to fight dirty. She just had not expected it so soon. She called her lawyer, Lauren Park, a sharp Korean-American woman who had handled celebrity divorces for years. Document everything, Jalia said. We will answer when the time is right, not before. Across town, Nolan saw the same posts while drinking black coffee in his quiet apartment. The fake texts made his stomach turn. He recognized Lydia's style immediately, the same careful cruelty she had used on him at the wedding. This time, rage felt clean and clear. He texted his sister from a new number. Meet me at the Lakeview Hotel Bar, noon. Come alone. Lydia arrived smiling, dressed in pale pink like innocence itself. She slid into the booth opposite him and reached for his hand. Finally, she said warmly, I knew you would see the truth about that woman. Nolan pulled his hand away and placed a small recorder on the table between them. The red light glowed. Tell me again how Jalia cheated on me, he said, voice low. Tell me how you know the baby isn't mine. Lydia's smile faltered for half a second. She recovered quickly. Nolan, sweetheart, I only repeated what the doctor told me, and now everyone sees her for what she is. Those messages don't lie. He leaned forward. They do lie. You made them. Just like you lied about the weeks at the wedding. I have your debts, Lydia. $2 million gone. You were terrified our child would take everything from you. So you decided to take my family from me first. Her face went white under the perfect makeup. You don't know what you're talking about. Nolan pressed stop on the recorder and slipped it into his pocket. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And now the whole world will too, when I play this for them. He stood up. Stay away from Jalia. Stay away from my child. You are done hurting the people I love. Lydia grabbed his sleeve, voice rising. You would choose her over your own sister? I am choosing the truth, he said. Something you never taught me how to do. He walked out without looking back. Outside in the bright afternoon sun, he transferred the recording to his lawyer with instructions to hold it until the perfect moment. For the first time since the wedding, Nolan felt steady. He had drawn the line, and this time he would stand on the right side of it. The annual Children's Hospital Gala filled the grand ballroom with soft gold light and the gentle clink of crystal. 600 of the city's wealthiest guests moved between silent auction tables and champagne stations, all dressed in their finest. Jalia stood near the back in a deep emerald gown that flowed over her 7-month pregnant belly. She had come only because the hospital was her personal charity, and she refused to let anyone chase her away. Lydia Brooks floated through the crowd like a queen in pale gold silk, laughing with donors and accepting compliments on her generous family. She had spent the evening playing the perfect supportive sister, telling anyone who would listen how heartbroken she felt for poor Nolan after his wife's betrayal. Every smile she gave felt like another twist of the knife she had planted weeks earlier. Nolan arrived late, wearing a simple black tuxedo that hung looser on his frame than it once had. He spotted Jalia first. She met his eyes across the room and gave the smallest nod, nothing warm, but acknowledgement all the same. He took a steadying breath and walked straight to the stage where the host was about to introduce the next speaker. "Excuse me," Nolan said into the microphone, voice clear and strong. The host stepped aside in confusion. Conversation died instantly. "I need 2 minutes of your time. Many of you were at my wedding. Many of you saw what I did to my wife that night. Tonight I fixed the rest of the damage." He turned toward the crowd and found Lydia near the front, her face suddenly pale. "My sister Lydia told me lies that destroyed my marriage," he continued. "She claimed my wife was unfaithful and that our child was not mine. I was drunk and foolish enough to believe her. I struck the woman I love in front of all of you. That shame is mine forever." Gasps rippled outward. Phones rose to record. Nolan pulled a small remote from his pocket and pressed play. Lydia's recorded voice filled the ballroom, cold and laughing. "I only needed you to doubt her, Nolan. No child means the trust stays split 2 ways instead of 3. Simple math." The confession played to the end, every ugly word hanging in the air. Lydia screamed and lunged toward the stage. "Turn that off! He's lying!" Security caught her arms before she reached the steps. Nolan kept speaking over her struggles. "Jalia never betrayed me. The baby is mine. Every rumor since the wedding came from this woman who wanted money more than family." He looked directly at his mother, Eleanor Brooks, who stood near Jalia with tears on her cheeks. "Mom, I'm sorry I waited this long." Eleanor stepped forward, voice cutting through the chaos like steel. "Lydia Brooks, you are no longer part of this family. Your name is removed from the trust tonight. Security will escort you out, and you will never enter another event with our name again." The room erupted in shouts and camera flashes as guards dragged Lydia away. She kicked and cursed, makeup running down her face, until the doors closed behind her. Silence fell again. Nolan stepped down from the stage and walked straight to Jalia. He stopped 2 feet away, hands open at his sides. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly, loud enough for only her and the people nearby. "I just needed the world to know the truth you deserved from the beginning." Jalia studied him for a long moment. Her eyes held no anger now, only tired recognition. She gave him the faintest nod and placed one hand protectively over her belly. It was not absolution, but it was acceptance of what he had finally done right. She turned and walked away through the parted crowd. head high as always, while Nolan watched the space she left behind and understood it would always stay empty. 2 years later, the city skyline carried Jalia's signature in steel and glass. Her firm had just broken ground on its tallest tower yet, and Forbes had crowned her Most Inspiring Woman of the Year. On the October morning the magazine hit newsstands, Jalia Morgan pushed a stroller through the park, laughing as her 18-month-old son Zion pointed at every falling leaf with pure delight. The boy had his mother's warm brown eyes and his father's stubborn curls, and he owned her heart completely. Nolan Brooks watched from the edge of the playground, hands deep in his coat pockets. He had lost 20 pounds, grown a neat beard, and stopped drinking the day Jalia walked out of the coffee shop with the signed papers. Every first of the month, the child support payment left his account without fail. He had never missed one, and he had never asked for more than photographs Keisha quietly sent every few months. Today he had come only to look, the way he sometimes did from a distance. Zion's laughter carried across the grass and wrapped around his chest like a hand he no longer deserved. He started to turn away when Jalia's voice stopped him. "Nolan!" She stood 10 feet away, one hand resting on the stroller handle. Zion spotted him and stretched both chubby arms out with a happy shout of "Da!" that made Nolan's eyes fill instantly. Jalia's face held no anger, only calm strength. "Come here," she said softly. "He knows your picture. It's time." Nolan walked forward as if the ground might open beneath him. When he reached them, Zion lunged forward. Jalia lifted the boy and placed him gently into Nolan's uncertain arms. The weight of his son against his chest broke something open that had been locked for 2 years. Nolan pressed his lips to the soft curls and breathed in the scent of baby shampoo and autumn air. "He's perfect," Nolan whispered, voice cracking. "He is," Jalia agreed. She watched them for a quiet minute, then spoke again. "I forgave you a long time ago, Nolan. Not for you. For me and for him. Carrying hate is heavier than any building I will ever design." Nolan looked at her, tears sliding freely now. "I know I lost the right to be your husband. I just want to be his father, even if it's only birthdays and Sundays." Jalia nodded once. "We will work out a schedule through the lawyers. He deserves to know you are trying." Zion patted Nolan's wet cheek with sticky fingers and giggled. Nolan laughed through the tears, the sound raw and grateful. Jalia took her son back, settling him on her hip. At the far end of the path, a tall man in a camel coat waited with an easy smile. Daniel Adeyemi was a London-based architect and her newest partner, both in business and in life. He respected her space, celebrated her strength, and never once raised his voice. When Jalia reached him, he brushed a kiss against her temple and tickled Zion under the chin. Nolan watched them walk away under the golden trees. The ache in his chest was still there, but it no longer crushed him. Jalia glowed in the afternoon light, her laughter mixing with their son's as Daniel lifted Zion onto his shoulders. Nolan stayed on the path a moment longer, hands in his pockets again. He smiled, small and painful and real. She had found the happiness she deserved, and his boy would grow up wrapped in love that never hurt. That was enough. Here's a warm outro, exactly 160 words in English. And that is the end of Jalia Morgan's journey, from the slap that shattered her wedding day to the sunlight she finally walked into with her son in her arms and peace in her heart. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with her, for feeling every tear, every victory, and every quiet moment of strength. What did this story make you feel? Who made you angry? Who made you proud? And what would you have done differently? Please drop your thoughts in the comments. Every single one means the world. If Jalia's courage touched you even a little, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so we can bring more stories of unbreakable women straight to you. Your support keeps these tales alive. Thank you for being here, for caring, and for rooting for queens who build their own crowns. See you in the next story. Much love.